This early morning. I am Christina Harrington. I am the Farm to Community Food Hubs Grant Program lead with the California Department of Food and Agriculture. So today is another application office hours session for you all. And just a friendly reminder, applications are due 5 p.m. Monday, April 14th. So really today is I'm going to go over a quick overview just so making sure we're all on a similar page when it comes to eligibility and the program's purpose. But then most of this hour is really meant to answer your questions as best I can today. So I let folks know if after I present for the next 10 minutes or so, if you don't have time to stay on and hear your question be answered or raise your hand to ask, send me an email. And that email address is on the slide right now, cafoodhubs@cdfa.ca.gov. You can put your questions in the chat, and when I'm done presenting, you'll also have a chance to raise your hand and you can ask verbally, and I'll bounce back and forth between raised hands in the chat to answer as many questions as I can. And with that, yeah. Oh, I'll mention that I won't be able to see the chat while I'm presenting, mostly because of, screens, but I'll get to them afterwards. And in case you didn't hear the announcement, yes, this session is being recorded. It will be posted on our website in a few days. If you haven't seen our website, we'll go over it a little bit, but there are recordings of the previous application office hours as well on there. Okay, so today I'm going to review the support we're offering the applicants, and I know a lot of you have already been using that, which is great. Reminding everyone the purpose of the grant program, who's eligible to apply, and like I said, we'll go over the website together because I know there's a lot of stuff there, and we want to make sure you know where everything is that you need. So I will respond to as many questions as I can today. Again, if you can't stay on or don't have time to get to your question, please send it to the email inbox. And while I will answer as many questions as I can, I really can't tell you how best to do your project. So I can't really recommend, oh yeah, you should do this instead of this, mostly because you know your communities and your capacity and your priorities best. But I can definitely answer how something may or may not align with the purpose of the program, specifics about grant requirements, what you can use funds for, and things like that. So we've been offering several support layers for everyone. And of course, email is awesome. A lot of people have been sending emails there. I'm trying to get back to you ASAP when possible. We've been updating our frequently asked questions every few weeks or so on the website. So I think I just updated those a few days ago, and I've been including them in the email blasts as well. And then, of course, office hours, which you all are at today. So today's the 26th. So we have two more in April, April 1st and April 10th. You are welcome to come to all of them if you'd like to. We'd love to see you there. And then the last layer of support I've been offering folks is for certain types of applicants who qualify for one-on-one meetings with me to go over their draft application materials. The applicants that qualify for these one-on-one meetings are Native American tribes, tribal-led nonprofit organizations, and food producers that are majority owned by socially disadvantaged, beginning, limited resource, veteran, or disabled food producers. So if you qualify for these one-on-one meetings and we haven't met yet, you can request that meeting with me by calling my cell phone if that's easier for you. It's on the slide, or go to our online form. The QR code is there, or I'll show you where it is on the website. And I do need to emphasize for everyone, for those who meet with me or want to meet with me, if they qualify for this, it doesn't mean I'm going to write your application. It doesn't mean I'm going to generate your budget, for example. But what it means is you show me what you have so far, and I give you feedback on how you could improve it based on the program priorities and the scoring criteria, which are all public information. So then the other resources we've been sharing is our grant information session recording and slide deck that we did back in February has been on our website, and that's more of a deeper dive into the grant program, whereas today is just a really quick overview. So definitely check that out if you haven't. And then our request for application is the 30+ page document that has all the guidelines, rules, and regulations, priorities, purpose, all that for this grant program. So that's the thing that I refer to all the time if I forget a detail that you asked me about. So it's definitely a valuable thing to look through. And in that document, there's a section on page 3 that is called Tips for Applicants. So if this is your first time applying for a grant or a second time, that definitely is a useful thing to read through. And then on our website, we have application submission checklist. It's a guide for you all to help remember what materials you need to submit for each funding track as part of your application. All right, so the purpose of the program is here on the screen, and if you've heard me present before, sorry for the broken record, but I always say this is the North Star for the program. So in one way or another, projects that are selected for an award should help feed into and achieve the goals and the purpose on this slide here. So the purpose is to incentivize the creation and permanency of public serving, aggregation, and distribution enterprises by investing in planning activities and piloting investments in the capital aggregation and distribution infrastructure that's needed to increase purchasing of local, environmentally sustainable, climate smart, and equitably produced food by schools and other institutions. And I want to pause at this bullet point because just in case anyone's on this call wondering this already, if because of this purpose listed in the first bullet point, selling food directly to consumers, with some exceptions, is typically not allowed for this program, and we can talk about what those exceptions could be because we're trying to increase purchasing of local sustainable food by schools and other institutions, public institutions and nonprofits. And also donating food would not be allowed under this grant program. And we're also investing in this infrastructure and planning activities to build a better food system economy, support the local farming and indigenous food production economies, accelerate climate adaptation and resilience, and employ food system workers with fair wages and working conditions. So we've defined a community food hub as the following. This is in the request for application. So some folks ask me, is what we're doing count as a food hub, or is what we want to plan considered a food hub? And I point to this definition. If it aligns with this, then likely yes. So it's an organization or business that serves as a supply chain intermediary by purchasing food products from and providing aggregation, distribution, or marketing services for multiple local or regional California food producers, especially those using sustainable or climate smart practices and following state labor practices. The Community Food Hub is providing these services to strengthen the ability of those food producers to reach sales markets with wholesale, retail, or institutional buyers, and identifies the source of 100% of the food that it's selling. So, touching on the eligibility a little bit in two parts, I say most types of entities are allowed to apply to either funding track. We have track 1 and track 2, as long as they're developing a quote new community food hub or expanding the capacity of a quote developed community food hub. And what those terms mean are the following. So, a new food hub is one that has either never conducted community food hub operations or has been conducting operations as a food hub and had an average annual gross income of $1 million or less the last 3 years. By contrast, a developed community food hub is one that had an average annual gross income between $1.1 million and $5 million the last 3 years. So as long as you are one of these types of food hubs, whether never having existed or you have and fall within these income ranges, you can apply to either track 1 or track 2. So getting more specific or technical, the entity types that are allowed to apply are listed under the green check mark. So you can see there's a lot. I won't read all of them, but I will read those that cannot apply. So individuals cannot apply, meaning like me, Christina Harrington, cannot be the applicant, but my business could be, for example. Private schools cannot apply. other local, state, and federal entities, and then food hubs, aggregators, and distributors that do not meet the definitions of new community food hub or developed community food hub. And I point this out because how we've defined developed community food hub, that would mean if there are ones with an average annual gross income greater than $5 million the last 3 years would not be eligible to apply to this program. And then how do we apply? So once you've completed all your required application materials, you would email those into us at cafoodhubs@cdfa.ca.gov. It's on the slide there. And all applications are due by 5 p.m. on Monday, April 14th. You can find all the application materials on the website. We'll go over that in a moment. And my hot tip for everyone is to use that application submission checklist, which I'll show you in a moment, because it'll just give you a quick overview. Okay, track 1, I need to submit this, this, and this. Track 2, I need to submit this, this, and this. Okay, so let's look at this website. Make sure I'm on the right slide. Okay. Here we go. Okay. There we go. So here's our website, the very top of the page, gives you an overview of the program. Scroll down and tells you how you apply. Submit all completed and required materials by emailing them as attachments to our email inbox. Here's that submission checklist I mentioned. Here's the request for application with all the details about this program. Here's our FAQs, which are they are sourced from all of you who email me, so thank you. So then track 1 planning, if you want to apply to track 1, here's your quick info, the award range amount and how long it can last, which is up to 24 months. And you click this green bar and all the application materials are here for track 1. What I want to point out is the application review criteria and scoring. This is not an application material, it's information for you. It's very detailed on how every single portion of the track 1 application will be scored by our reviewers. So if you want to know what they're looking for, this is definitely something you should check out. If you're applying for track 2, infrastructure and operations, you get your quick info here, award amount, range amount, grant term is 60 months, and then click the green bar and you have all your application materials here. Just like track 1, track 2's review criteria is here as well. Very detailed, tell you exactly what reviewers are looking for. And I do want to point out for folks who've already been working on their track 2 application that some of you, thank you, notified me there was an issue with the network list, which is an Excel spreadsheet. Folks weren't able to insert rows before, so I updated that the other day. So this should be working properly for you now. So if you want to download that. All right, and then when you scroll down, here's our information about application assistance. Again, our FAQs, our email. Here is the information session I mentioned, which is more of the deep dive into the program. So you can look at the recording of the slide deck. All of our application hours are here, the recordings, the upcoming registration links. And then if you qualify for those 101 meetings I mentioned, if you're a tribal-led nonprofit, or a food producer, majority owned by socially disadvantaged, veteran, disabled, beginning, or limited resource producers, you qualify for 101 meetings. This is all the information about it, who can request the assistance, and then how. So this is the online form or my cell phone. And then just gives you information about what I'll be doing and what I'll not be doing. Again, I won't write an application, but I'll review what you've put together and we can talk about it. And I'll stop there so that we can just get to everyone's questions. And I know there's a lot in the chat, so we'll go there first. And then if anyone wants to ask a question verbally, you can use your raise the hand feature now. If I do unmute you, I just ask you to speak around 2 minutes or less, just so we have time to get to as many questions as possible. All right, looking in the chat. Good morning, everyone. Hi. Um, where are these questions? Okay, 3 questions. Rebecca was ready. All right. From Rebecca, 3 questions. Does every position represented in the project budget need to be described under project team with a role? Can signed? Okay, let's do one at a time. So, yes, if so your budget needs to kind of make sense in the context of your application. So if in your budget I see, let's say 4 people on your team, but your project team had 2 people, I'd wonder what happened, right? So anyone you are paying, whether it's a consultant or an employee in your budget should be reflected in your project team section of your application. And if they are a different role than we've prompted you to describe, you can just put them under other roles, if that makes sense. Um, Great question. And then second question, can signed letter of support and food producer verification forms be submitted in PDF form? Yes, they can. And then what does wet or e-signature mean? Wet means like someone physically signed it, and then the e-signature is uh like sometimes Adobe will have e-signature capabilities or Word has an e-signature. So it's kind of like a verified digital signature, if you will. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, Mike, can you explain further the advance payments or reimbursements aspect of the grant? Yeah, great question. So I'll share the request for application section where we talk about this. Okay, I'll share my screen. Okay, so this is the request for application. Section 1.9, we talk about advance payments or reimbursements. So by default, this is a reimbursement grant program, meaning if you're selected for award and we sign the agreement and you start your project, you start doing your project activities, and then you would send an invoice to CDFA to be reimbursed for your allowable costs. So by default, that's how the project works. But some grant recipients may be eligible to receive advance payments for the project costs. And here we have more information about what that is. So how that will work is if you're selected for award and you do indicate you want an advance payment, you let us know, and then there is a process for requesting that. And we can share more information we will share more information about that with grant recipients when that time comes. But there's specific things that folks will need to have lined up in order to receive an advance payment if they're approved for one. And there's certain amounts that folks can request depending on if they're a 501c3 nonprofit or not. So here we say for 501c3 nonprofits that qualify, the advance payment cannot exceed 25% of the total grant award. And then all other types of qualifying recipients, so for-profit, for example, can receive advance payments for a 90-day period. Important note, advance payments cannot reduce the project balance below 10% of the award amount. So the advance payment process, as I'm learning it along with as I'm new to this too, but if you qualify, you would need to submit additional paperwork to CDFA to indicate why you qualify, why you would need an advance payment, and making sure that you have the bank account set up to receive that. Hopefully that helps explain a little bit more, Mike. Happy to answer more questions, or if you want to send an email too, if there's a specific thing in mind, we can talk about that too. All right, Wanda, are there age restrictions relative to the producers? We operate school site-based farms. Age restrictions as in like how long they've been operating? Or literally the age of the person growing the food? I'm gonna assume it means like how long they've been operating. So there's no restrictions. There is So one of the types of priorities for the producers are beginning farmers and ranchers and producers. So that is defined as they've been operating for 10 years or less. So it's fine if they've only been operating for 1 year or 20 years. Yeah, great question. Um, Morning, Jessica. Welcome. All right, Lindsay, how do we account for cost of living increases for paid position in the food hub? The template does not allow for breaking down the budget by years. Yeah, great question. So you could write it in, let me see if I can just show my screen. But you could account for that, I guess, in the line item, Lindsay. And then in the purpose justification part of that line, you could explain it there if you want. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, it's a great question and good consideration. Ray, two questions on the work plan. Is there a recommended or necessary number or range for objectives and goals? And under who will do the work section, can we just include titles or do we need to list titles and names? Good questions. How about I just pull it up and we can all look at it together. Short answer is there is not a recommended range or number of objectives and goals. It's what you think is needed for the work plan. So this is the track 2 work plan template. I scrolled down. So if you haven't looked at these, I recommend now while we're on the call together, go on the website, start looking at the materials and looking through them because it does help to see it visually. So what they were asking is there a number, like a recommended amount of objectives? It really just depends on what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve. So what makes sense for your proposed project. And then for who will do the work, we put down, yeah, I think just the title is fine. If you already, like in some cases, people are gonna hire new people, so they don't know the name yet. So they could put, their title and then will be hired. Or in this case, I also said contractor to be hired. But if you already know the person's name and they're in your budget, might as well just put their name so it's super clear for the reviewers. Reviewers are going to be scoring the work plan and the budget as a unit and making sure that they make sense with each other. So they'll be looking at them at the same time and they might be able to pick up who you're referring to, but the more clarity is always the better, I would say. Good question. Ophelia, I am new to this program and I'm very confused. I am a producer and I cannot find the application for farmer producer. I don't know how to start. Yeah, Ophelia, yeah, thanks for joining us. So I know there's a lot of materials on the website and that's why we looked at it together. So there's not a specific application for farmers or producers. Farming operations are eligible to apply if they want to plan or create a new food hub, or if they already operate a food hub to expand those operations. I will just say, because I've talked to a lot of farmers about the program, to be super clear that this grant does not fund your farm directly. It will not be covering your farming costs. It's going to be covering costs for a food hub operation, the entity that is aggregating food from farmers, for example, and then working to distribute that food to buyers like public schools or food banks or other institutional buyers. So it's not intended to cover compost or seeds or tractors for farmers directly. So I just want to make that really clear because I know some farmers have been looking into this program too. But I will share my screen again just so we see where all the materials are. Actually, I'll put the link in the chat first. to the website. So if you click that link, it's in the chat now. Then you can open up the website and you'll see this when you open it up. You'll scroll down, you'll see the program overview, which we talked about. How do you actually apply? You email all the attachments to us. And then the materials you need to open and use are then all here, depending on the track you want to apply for. Again, these are not grants to cover farming costs, but if you're looking to plan a food hub or to create and implement food hub operations, then this grant is probably aligned with what you're looking for. So if you're looking for track 1, you click this green bar, and these are the materials you need to use. Here's the application questions. And again, for anyone on the call who hasn't opened these yet, just do it now while we're on the call and look through, start writing out your bullet points and things like that. It's better when we just start drafting earlier. And then here's the work plan template, project budget, and letter of support template for track 1. For track 2, if you want to implement or expand food hub operations, click this green bar and the materials are here. Track 2 application questions, the work plan, project budget, food producer network list, where you need to input your food producers and their characteristics that you'll be working with during the project, verification forms in English and in Spanish, and your letter of support form. And I'll just highlight this again because I get questions about this sometimes. This form is required for the letter of support. You need to use this form with your folks signing on for your project in support. Just receiving a letterhead with their signature saying, we like the project won't be accepted. You need to use this form. It's a Word doc because it asks them specific questions. So Ophelia, let me know if that helps, or if you want, you can send me an email and we can, have a call later and we could talk through it. All right. Artist, thank you. Okay, thanks for coming. All right, Ray again. In the application templates, do we need to closely match the fonts used? For example, in the application questions, there are blue fonts, and in the work plan, there are red fonts. In budget, there are sections with italics. We have a colorblind staff member and also know that black may be the preference for those reviewing. That is so thoughtful. Thanks for asking that, Ray. No, you don't have to follow the colors. It was just hoping that it was more apparent for you when you're looking through it to see where you write in your answers, since we don't have a grant portal to work with right now. That's why we're using these Word docs. So yeah, I would say though, and I should say this because some people have shown me their draft applications. Please use the template though, and don't change. Let me share my screen so we all know what we're talking about. Here we go. For example, this is the track 1 application questions. And, everything for track 1, if you haven't noticed, has green font, and everything for track 2 has orange font. So for example, all this has been, green, capitalized. Try not to change the questions or the titles or the color of these titles, only because as a reviewer, it'll be really difficult to judge where our question is versus your response. So as best as you can, don't change like this formatting, but where you see type your text here, you can use blue, black, red, totally up to you. You can highlight it, that's fine. But try not to change like this color or remove the questions. Like don't remove the question because then the reviewers will wonder, oh my gosh, what are they answering? And then it'll just get kind of messy. So as best you can do that. And I know some people transfer it to Google Docs and then, so sometimes it changes a little bit. If it changes a little bit, that's okay, but don't just like delete the question. Um, Great questions, Ray. Thank you. Um, okay. Sunpreet, for the questions, do the owners or leaders of the organization live in California? I wanted to ask for clarification which leaders of the business organization information we should share if we have local leadership that works independently and will be making the decisions regarding the project, but share the EIN number with the headquarters of the organization. Yeah, great question. I've had a few of these because in the request for application, which I'm going to share again, so we all look at the same thing. Okay, let me share my screen. It's hard doing this on a little laptop. Um, okay. So this is the request for application eligibility section. So for track 1 and track 2, this language is in here. The entity is based in and operating in California. So some folks have asked, well, what if our headquarters is not in California? And I tell them, then your entity is not eligible. So you need to be based in and operating in is your headquarters is in California. So hopefully that helps clarify more directly, Sunpreet, your question. Let me know though if it didn't. Okay, Becca, do meat and honey producers qualify as producers for this grant? Yes, definitely, definitely. It's producers are folks cultivating crops, raising livestock, harvesting seafood, or if you're a Native American tribe, tribal member, or Native American person using traditional food production practices. Those are all folks that are food producers for this program. Neil, if my neighbor has an apple tree orchard, does he count as a producer if my org buys, let's say, a case of apples a week from him? Can you please further explain the minimum viability for a producer? Yeah, great question. So I'll show the RFA again. So we're all, here we go. Okay, so this is the definition section of the RFA. So we've defined a food producer as a person, group of people, nonprofit, or tribe that leases, rents, or owns land in California, cultivates crops, raises livestock, or is a seafood harvester. Also, California Native American tribe, tribal member or person, using land, I'm paraphrasing, using land and using indigenous food production practices on that land or in the waters. So if someone meets that definition, they would be a food producer. There's no requirement of how much they're producing or how little they're producing, or like, do they own the land? Or are they leasing the land? I mean, even in here, we say whether they lease, rent, or own the land, or for tribes, rent, own, or use the land. So it's fine if it's 2 boxes of apples or if it's 20 pallets of apples. And again, there's several food producers that we're looking for food hubs to be serving in particular, and one of those groups are food producers operating on 500 acres or less. So that is even a priority. All right, and then Sunpreet again. One question on the producer forums is for our New Roots Farmers participants who are farming at our organization's farm location. Should we list the New Roots Farm as the business name organization on the form or put NA there instead because they're selling under the New Roots Farm, but as individual farmers? Excuse me. On the RFA, the food producers are defined as an individual group. and it doesn't specifically mention that they need to be operating as a business. That's true. It does not say they need to be operating as a business. So, okay, I think I know what you're referring to. New Roots, I believe, is the one in West Sacramento, right? Where you have folks farming there on the same land in their own parcels. Um, yeah, so I would list them individually. I guess the follow-up question is how does the invoicing work, I guess? That's kind of like gets into the weeds a little bit. But yeah, if you're purchasing individually from them, then I would list them individually. If you're purchasing from New Roots Farm, then I would put New Roots as the producer, if that makes sense. Joe, is that a raised hand? Okay. I just happened to look. Let me unmute you. Okay. Can you unmute there?
Yeah.
Hey.
Hi. Thank you. I have it printed on the chat also, but I'll just read it. After fulfilling local institutional needs, can Food Hub also sell standard grocery store items in order to start as a fully functional market with the intention of replacing standard items with locally produced as possible?
Okay, so I heard two things in there. So, yeah, folks can for track two, which is the
Yeah,
implementation grant. Yeah,
right.
those grantees can sell to private buyers. And I'll share my screen again, part of the RFA that we talk about this.
So
Mhm.
in this situation, there would be a brick and mortar also. And I wondered, because we don't have a lot of food producers in the region right now, it wouldn't be enough to stock a market appropriately, and then we might not get the people to come in. This is after serving the institutional buyers. But yeah, so I wondered if we could stock other items that are common in other markets to make the market, appealing to the public essentially, so that you could go
Okay.
into the market and get anything you need,
Oh, I
including a
see.
ton of local produce, but there's also the other things you need there. And then with the intention of switching out those items for locally produced as they come online.
Oh, okay. By market, you mean like a retail
Yeah,
space that
this
I can
this
walk
would have,
into.
right, after serving to serve the community, the local community, but after serving institutional buyers, basically, could there be a brick and mortar market that can serve the community?
I gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, so we do have, I'll share my screen. So we all know what to refer to later if we forget. Um, so this is the RFA under allowable costs. So for brick and mortar, it is allowed to have your own retail storefront that's owned and operated by the Food Hub, if that's something that's part of your business model. So you can serve consumers directly through that. But again, it's not really the emphasis or purpose of the program to sell to directly to consumers. These are a lot of the exceptions you're seeing on the screen right now. But specific to your question, where is it? Yeah, here we go. Distributing food directly to individuals, such as at community events, is not allowed. But the exception, if you own and operate your own retail storefront, you could use funds related to that. So that was to provide some flexibility for folks because we know that sometimes that's the model people are using. But again, the purpose and like one of the goals is really to sell to the institutions, which I hear you understand that, which is good. In terms of the products you could have in there, so these funds can only be used to invest in California food products. And based on how we've defined food hubs, they're sourcing from producers, aka farmers, ranchers, etc. So if you wanted to purchase products from other states or countries, you wouldn't be able to use funds for that. the grant funds for that. Or if you were purchasing from, I don't know, food manufacturers in California, that also wouldn't be allowed because we're looking for you to use funds to purchase food directly from the producers themselves, not manufacturers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but they could be alongside. But if funds weren't used from the grant to purchase them, they could be alongside those items.
Yeah, you could have, products,
Okay.
whatever you're selling in your space where it gets something we would might want to talk about is if we have language saying that if you're using grant funds for something that's benefiting non-grant activities, CDFA will only cover a proportion of that cost. And how you determine the proportion, is kind of case by case because everything is a little different. So we could talk more specifics about that if you want. You could send me an email or give me a call or something.
Okay. Thank you. That sounds good.
Cool. Thanks, Joe. All right, not seeing any other hands raised. I'm gonna go back to the chat. Um, hmm, okay. One question. Oh, we went over that. For New Food Hub, how a network list can be provided. So yeah, good question, Sergio. So this is for track 2 application, right? So you would have to download, let me share my screen. So I got this question from someone else yesterday. We don't have the network list at CDFA. We're asking applicants to submit their own network list. So how you do that is you download, you click this link to download. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And then I think I actually have it open here to show everyone. Oh, you can't see that. Let me share it again. Okay. And this is what it looks like. So I'll zoom out a little bit. So this is the network list and you need to fill it in. This is again for track 2 only. Instructions, note about data privacy because everything you submit to CDFA is subject to public records request. You'd enter if you're the lead applicant, your name, your project title, the county of where your food hub will be operating, and then fill in this list. So I put just some fake, examples here, fake farm figs, testing tasty fake farms, things like that. So you just delete that and fill this in. So you would list every food producer that you anticipate or you'll be working with, purchasing from during the grant term. And we know that changes seasonally and annually, and 60 months is a long time. So you just do your best of filling in who you're going to work with and which county they operate in. And then for each one, and there's, drop down menu of which counties there are. And then for each producer, you answer these questions in the orange boxes. Is it owned by a socially disadvantaged food producer? Yes or no? Owned by a limited resource food producer? Yes or no? Operating on 500 acres or less? A beginning food producer? Cooperatively owned? Veteran owned? Owned by a person with a disability? Are they using environmentally sustainable, climate smart, or regenerative agricultural practices? So you would say yes or no for every single food producer that you list in this spreadsheet. Down here, you might wonder what this is all about. This is not for your use. It's what reviewers are going to be using because we are going to be scoring this network list based on how many food producers are on here, how many are considered local per our definition, and how many are socially disadvantaged, limited resource, operating on 500 acres or less, beginning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the network list is something that the applicant needs to create and submit as part of their track 2 application package. Because we're looking to see, what relationships you all have and who you're going to be working with. Great question. All right, Tamia, Hi, so glad you're here. If our country store currently sells to consumers directly, students, and plans to sell to MJ, the junior college food services and local school districts in this project, would this qualify for track 2? If our country store sells to consumers and plans. Yeah, so if a I'll call your store a food hub for the sake of this program. So if the food hub currently, if they're purchasing food from multiple farmers, for example, but right now they're only selling to directly to consumers, could they qualify if they plan to expand into schools? Yes. Yeah. If your intention is to sell to public institutions like schools or like the college in your case, Tamaya, yeah, that's totally fine. And you explain that in your application, what your plan is. All right, Becca, we noticed a network list producer verification form discrepancy. The verification form does not ask the producer to specify which category of socially disadvantaged they belong to, but the network list asks us to specify. I'm clarifying that we should go back and ask them which category they want us to check off for them on the network list. Yeah, great question. That is a good point. So I'll share my screen again for the network list. So what I think it was Becca, sorry, that asked, here we ask you to say yes or no if they're socially disadvantaged, and so does the verification form. And then here we ask you then to specify, are they women owned by white Caucasian food producers, or LGBTQ owned? You don't have to fill this in. This won't be scored directly by reviewers. Really, it's just yes or no if they're socially disadvantaged. The thought process for the verification form on not asking them to specify was for privacy. So, yeah, good question. Jessica, are grower stipends an allowable cost? Great question. Yeah, it depends. It depends on what the stipends are for, what your project is, typically we're looking at costs that are quote reasonable and necessary to implement the project and to meet project goals. So I would need a little more context of why you would pay growers the stipends, but for example, for track 1 planning, we do list that as an example of a cost you could include, is paying participation stipends. Maybe you're hosting workshops or something as part of your planning process, and you want to incentivize growers to join, and you offer participation stipends. That could be something that could be allowed. Yeah, so it would just depend on what it's for. All right, Janelle. 1. To what extent will scale be considered by reviewers of the proposal? For example, we propose using funds to construct a neighborhood level. Let me just exit. Oh, shoot. Okay. We propose to use funds to construct a neighborhood level community food hub that would source to smaller nonprofit and educational institutions in our neighborhood. We are worried that we might not be as competitive as larger regional food hubs sourcing to large nonprofits and universities. Yeah, good question. And you're not the first one to ask it. So there's no scoring for scale. We don't, in terms of buyers and amount of food or volume you'll be moving. The only, I'm like going through my memory to make sure this is true. One of the things that is scored is for track 2, the number of food producers that are on that network list that we just looked at. So if you have 10 or more food producers on that network list, you would receive 2 additional points. If you have 9 or less, you would receive 0 points for that piece. But in terms of volume of food you're moving or the size of the institution or buyer, we don't ask for that, and we don't score based on that. Yeah, good question. Do we need to already have existing buyers, or can we propose buyers for track 2? Yeah, great question. You no, you don't need to have existing buyers. Folks who have never operated a food hub are eligible to apply if they want to create a new one. So they wouldn't have buyers already. But for track two, we are asking among the letter of supports that you're required or asked to submit, that two of them are from buyers that are either public institutions or nonprofits who are interested in purchasing food from the food hub. So I will share my screen again. And this time, show everyone the application submission checklist. Again, this tool for you to use to remember and track what's required. Sorry, we'll go up. So this is the top of it. And so for track one planning, you don't need to submit any letters of support from buyers or potential buyers. Instead, it's from three food producers and two community supporters, which could be individual or organizations that can vouch for the value your project would have in the local communities that you're serving. And then for track two, here are the materials you need to submit. 6 letter of support forms. And again, this form is a specific form on the website that we looked at. It's a Word document that you need to use. You need 2 of these from buyers, either a public institution or nonprofit buyer. One from a business or economic development supporter. So someone with business coaching, business expertise, or economic development expertise. And then 3 community supporters. Again, could be individuals or organizations that can vouch for the impact and value your project will have in the communities that you're serving. And let me also show the track 2 application questions. Details everything I just said even better. So again, if you haven't opened up this document, do it right now. Start bullet pointing in here. Start looking through everything. So letters of support section in the track 2 application questions document details everything I just said right here. How you need to use the required letter of support form. You find it on the website. All the forms need to be signed to count. Letters of support cannot be from individuals that are employees of the applicant's business or receiving a financial benefit from the award. For example, if they were a consultant in your project budget, they cannot be the one signing your letter of support. And then detailing who these letters of supports need to be from: the 2 buyers, economic development or business development supporter, and community supporters. And there's examples of what this could look like in each of these categories here for you. Okay. Lindsay, how do we identify project roles if they have been written into another grant and will be paid with other funding? Yeah, good question. I think I understand. So if someone would be helping you implement your project, but you're not going to be paying them with this grant, they're getting paid elsewhere, that's fine. Yeah, you could write in, Christina's going to be helping us with this thing, and you can note there so reviewers are clear, she will be funded by other pots of funding and is not included in the budget, something like that. Just so it's super clear for reviewers. And that's why I tell people, like, there's word limits for different sections of the application, but hopefully they're fairly large enough, but clarity is super key. So, draft out your responses and then go over it again. Ask a friend or a trusted partner to look at it. Does it make sense to them? Ideally, someone that's not as close to it as you are, right? So that they can tell you, oh, I don't know what that means, or something like that, right? So super, super clear, because reviewers are not going to know your organization likely. They don't know exactly, your community. So being really clear is always great. Okay, Jesse, when the application says we need a food safety plan for the hub, does this mean group gap? or should funding be used for food safety training plan development for individual farms who don't have that in place yet, or both? Yeah, great question. So this Jesse's referring to track two. So track two, if you apply, let me pull up the language so that we all look at the same thing in the RFA. Okay. Okay, this is page 18 of the request for application. This is track two allowable costs. So food safety related costs are allowed, and we give you some examples. Note about food safety. Applicants that do not currently have a food safety plan in place for the hub must include costs related to developing food safety plans in the proposed budget. And then we go on to explain it depends on what level of food safety you would need, depending on your operation. There's different federal regulations around this, but we link to documents and another website by a UC group that has a lot of templates already made for specifically for food hubs around food safety and a lot of educational documents. So if you're not super familiar with this, definitely check out these documents here provided by UC Sareb and CAF. So, but to answer your question more directly, so it would be around, you could definitely include group gap costs if that's something your food hub wanted to do to support smaller farmers to have their own food safety set up. That is definitely, you know, an added benefit that food hubs can and do offer their growers. But what we meant is specifically the food safety for the food hub operation itself. So depending on what you're handling, your size, income, and a few other factors, it'll depend on what level of food safety that you need to have as an operation. So if that's something that you're still figuring out, that's fine, but you will need to include those costs or estimated costs in your food safety part of the budget for track two. So it could be, yeah, you said food safety training. So it could be your labor time, or maybe you hire a consultant to help you with put together a food safety training plan. It could be trainings that you might need to participate in. Again, it just depends on what level you all would need as an operation. But if you wanted to do group gap, since that's more around the farmer's food safety on farm, that would be, if you're wondering like what part of the budget to put that under, I'd put that under other costs if there were some specific costs you were looking at for that. All right, other question, is refrigerated vehicles an allowed equipment expense for track one? Great question. It is not. So track one planning is really focused on the planning activities and process that folks need to go through or want to go through to either plan for a new food hub or do some planning for an existing food hub. Maybe they want to, I don't know, develop some new marketing strategies or something, or expand into a different market, and they want to focus some time on how to actually execute that. So it's not about operations. It's not about implementing a food hub. So you can't purchase refrigerated vehicles or coolers, nothing like that in terms of infrastructure or operational equipment. It's really focused on, you know, someone told me track one planning is kind of like the research. Like, yes, it's kind of like research. So you could pay your team that are focused on that planning efforts. Maybe you're doing some community engagement, so costs related to that. Maybe you hire consultants to help you with something, things like that. All right. All right, Joe, we talked about your question. Thanks.
I have
Janelle,
another.
oh yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah, I still have another one. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay. So I'll just read it again. Our facility will have food processing and packaging capabilities in order to facilitate producers to value add items. Using food processing equipment at the food hub, can items produced there have own label under the food hub, or is it intended to be white labeled and carry the producer's label?
Oh, that's a great question. Excuse me. So The way we defined food hub, community food hub for the program notes that a food hub, and I'm gonna share it so we're all looking at the same thing for our visual learners. Okay, so part of the food hub definition is they identify the source of 100% of the food products sold. So we don't dictate exactly how the food hub does that. There's different strategies that people use out there. Maybe it's via the invoice to your buyers. Maybe it is on the label. If you're creating, new products from their food products, or maybe it's some other strategy you have. So, yeah, however that makes sense for you all, works. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Okay, I think, okay, yeah. Jamie, oh wait, I think I skipped some questions. Oh yeah, Janelle. 1, are we limited to 10 food producer verification forms or can we provide more than 10? You can provide more than 10, but you won't receive more points for doing that. So the maximum points would be for 10 forms. And then other question, in addition to the required letter of support forms, are letter of support from other stakeholders in a more traditional letter of support format allowed? Again, you could, but reviewers won't be looking at those, and you won't receive more points for submitting more letters of support. Yeah, and for track 2, you need to use the letter of support forms because we're looking for those specific types of groups. Great questions. Jamie, do staff qualify for advance payment in terms of budget? Oh, like staff costs. Um, it depends. So, I don't know if you're on the call the full time when we talked about advance payments, but um, so if grant recipients want an advance payment, they notify us. They'd have to go through some paperwork and fill out essentially justifying why they need it. And they would need to detail exactly how they're going to use the funding, when they'll use it, and then report on the use of the funds. So, yeah, to my knowledge, there's no um, exclusions on what types of costs could be used in an advance payment, but you would have to demonstrate why you would need the advance payment. Maybe it's a cash flow issue, maybe you need to purchase something super expensive, things like that. Great. That was a really great question. Thank you for that. Can track, here we go. For track 1, can we have community partners outside of our county? Yes, yeah, you can definitely have folks outside of your county if they're working with you as part of the project and they see the value. Okay. For track 1 planning grants, what kind of equipment would be appropriate to request for grant funds? Yeah, great question. So, similar to the other question, the equipment for track 1 is not operational equipment. It's not to buy coolers or trucks or anything like that. What we mean by equipment is, in the case for a planning grant, maybe that's things you need to purchase or rent as part of community engagement. Maybe it's software that you need to purchase for mapping or surveys or something like that. So it's not, don't think of like, moving food, but really just the equipment you might need to implement a planning project itself. Yeah. Great question. Are farmers or ranchers VAPs eligible? Value-added products. Yeah, great question. So yeah, if you're purchasing products from the producer, that's allowed. Yeah. And again, I'm referring back to the definition of the community food hub where you're directly sourcing from producers. So if they themselves are making their own value-added products, then that's fine. And Rashid, yes, I hope so, yes. How do you enable editing the food producer network list? Yeah, sometimes there's a button at the top of the screen that'll say enable editing. So depending on what system you're using, and you should be able to click enable editing, but if you want, we can go over it together, Ophelia, if you want to reach out to me. All right. All right, Joe. We talked about that. Bridget, of that network list, we need to provide verification forms from 10, correct? Yes, correct. So the food producer verification forms need to be signed by food producers that are on that network list. And let me share my screen again. And show you this section. So this is again referring to track two's application. So these are the application questions under the serving food producers section, part A, food producer network list. So it's describing that network list that we looked at together, the spreadsheet. And then it mentions the food producer verification forms, which is a Word document, all found on the website that we looked at together earlier. So it tells you in the network list each food producer that you'll directly serve and likely purchase from. And then using the food producer verification form, submit 10 from food producers that are included in the food producer network list. If you have less than 10 on the network list, submit as many food producer verification forms from those food producers as possible. So yes, they should match. If we see a verification form from Farmer A, we should see Farmer A on your network list too. All right. To provide clean drinking water for community and for producing beverages, can Track 2 funding be used for drilling new well and installing water treatment system at the food hub location? For um I need to know a little bit more about that, Joe. Like
Yeah.
clean drinking water for, you said for the community, but
Basically wanted to start with, we have kind of an arsenic in the water issue where I live, and it affects quite a few people, and knowing it's really expensive to treat individually. So there's a lot of bottled water being purchased, et cetera. So I thought it'd be really valuable for the community to have a clean water that they can get for less expensively. Hopefully, if there's any bottling, glass instead of plastic, and just meant for the locale, not to be, sold elsewhere. But just to start, like if we wanted to do beverages like teas and whatever, just to start with the very cleanest water. Um,
right.
Wondered if those, yeah.
Yeah, if it's necessary for the operation of the food hub, then it I could see it might be allowed. But yeah, if it's just to provide drinking water for the community generally, obviously a need, but if it's not specific to the project, then it falls outside the purpose.
Okay.
But yeah, if there was, I mean, yeah, you were talking about processing and things like this.
Yeah.
So if you all, yeah, if you can demonstrate why that's needed to be treating your water just to function as a business, that's
Yeah.
an important thing to include in your justification.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we are at 10:40, so I'll try to answer one more question, but then I'm gonna have to hop off. But again, if I didn't get time to answer your question, please, please, please send it to the email, which I'm gonna put in the chat. Please send it to that email that's in the chat, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. So one more question from Sergio. Can Track 2 allow costs for building the food hub facility? The budget template does not specifically refer to construction. Yeah, great question. It does. It does. It can. So Track 2's, I'll share in the RFA again. Okay. So why there's not a specific section for that in the budget is because for CDFA, we define equipment as having a valuable, tangible property, having a valuable life beyond 1 year and costing $10,000 or more per unit. So it kind of depends on what exactly the costs are for, but this is the RFA allowable costs for track 2. So under equipment and supplies, we do put construction equipment and supplies. Oops, sorry. So yeah, construction's allowed. But so it depends. Like if you're gonna hire a contractor to do that work, then the contractor fees and costs would go under that section of the budget. And depending on, how they do the estimate for you, maybe they'll mark out, delineate what the supplies will cost versus labor, things like that. So, but yeah, if you're gonna do your own construction somehow, or you're gonna purchase supplies directly, depending on how you all decide to do it. So if you purchase your own equipment, that's 10,000 or more, you'd put that under equipment, or your own supplies, you'd put that under supplies. But then if you're gonna hire a contractor to do that work, you can put those fees under contractor and consultants. Yeah. But yeah, construction is definitely allowed. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. Appreciate you too, Michael. Thanks. Glad you're here. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you all at the next office hours. Please, please, please send me an email. Or I have some meetings today, but you can give me a call, especially Ophelia, if you're still on here, and we can find a time to meet. And yeah, we'll go from there. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Christina.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Sergio.
I'll be in touch via email.